The Horrific Captivity of Elizabeth Fritzl. On August 28, 1984, 18-year-old Elizabeth Fritzl, born to Joseph and Rosemary Fritzl, went missing from a small quiet town in Lower Austria. Her mother frantically went to the police to file a missing persons report. After no clues or word from her, they received a letter supposedly from Elizabeth stating that she had grown tired of her family life and went to live with a friend, warning her parents not to look for her or she would leave the country. When questioned by the police, the only clue her father Joseph was able to give was that she had likely joined a cult, something she had talked about wanting to do in the past. Little did the policeman know, the 18-year-old missing girl was 20 feet below him in the basement of the family's home. Her father had been remodeling the basement into a makeshift dungeon meant to imprison his own daughter. Once it was completed, all excepting the door, he lured her down there by asking for her help to carry and fit it into place. He then covered her face with an ether-soaked towel, causing her to lose consciousness, and threw her into the chamber, locking the door behind her. After a while of searching to no avail, the police and her mother Rosemary eventually believed Joseph's lies about her joining a cult, and the investigation ran cold. Over the next 24 years, Joseph went down to the basement nearly every morning under the guise of drawing up plans for the machines that he sold to manufacturing firms. 2 years after her imprisonment started, the real horrors began. His daily visits now consisted of him forcing her to watch pornography and then raping her, leading to a pregnancy that ended in miscarriage. 2 years later, she fell pregnant again, and in August of 1988 she gave birth to a baby girl named Kirsten. Years later, she had 2 more children, boys named Stefan and Felix, who along with Kirsten remained in the cellar with their mother for the duration of her imprisonment, being brought weekly rations of food and water by Joseph. Elizabeth attempted to teach them with the rudimentary education she herself had, and give them the most normal life she could under their horrific circumstances. They were terrified into not trying to escape by Joseph's threats that they would be gassed if they tried to escape, and were told that the door would electrocute them if they so much as touched it. At times, Fritzl would punish the family by shutting off their lights or refusing to deliver food for days at a time. In 1994, Fritzl allowed the enlargement of the prison from 380 to 590 square feet, putting Elizabeth and her children to work digging out soil with their bare hands for years. Over the duration of her imprisonment, Elizabeth gave birth to a total of 7 children, one of which died and Joseph cremated. The other 3 children were brought upstairs to live with him and Rosemary, but he could not simply bring the babies up without suspicion being raised, so in order to conceal what he was doing, he staged elaborate discoveries of the children, often involving placing them in bushes near the home or on the doorstep. Each time, the child would be swaddled neatly and accompanied with a note allegedly written by Elizabeth, claiming that she couldn't take care of the baby and was leaving it with her parents for safekeeping. On the 19th of April, 2008, Elizabeth's oldest daughter fell unconscious due to an illness. Fritzl agreed to take her to the hospital after Elizabeth begged her father to get 19-year-old Kirsten medical attention. She helped him carry her upstairs, where she saw the outside for the first time in years. After Fritzl called an ambulance, he forced Elizabeth to go back to the basement. Kirsten was taken to a local hospital, the Landesklinikum Amstetten, and was admitted in serious condition with life-threatening kidney failure. Fritzl later arrived at the hospital claiming to have found a note written by Kirsten's mother. He discussed Kirsten's condition and the note with a doctor, Albert Reiter. The medical staff found Kirsten's case odd and contacted the police on April 21st. The police broadcasted an appeal on public media for the missing mother to come forward and provide information about Kirsten's medical history. Elizabeth's case was reopened. Fritzl repeated his story about Elizabeth being in a cult and presented what he claimed was the most recent letter from her, dated January 2008, posted from a nearby town. The police contacted a church officer and expert on cults who raised doubts about the existence of the group Fritzl described. He noted that Elizabeth's letters seemed dictated and oddly written. Elizabeth pleaded with Fritzl to be taken to visit her daughter. On the 26th of April, he released her from the cellar along with her sons Stefan and Felix, bringing them upstairs. He and Elizabeth went to the hospital where Kirsten was being treated. Following a tip from Dr. Ryder that Fritzl and Elizabeth were at the hospital, the police detained and took them to a police station for questioning. Elizabeth would not provide any information until the police promised that she would never be returned to her father. She began to tell the story of her 24 years in captivity and how her father had begun sexually assaulting her from age 11. In the basement, Elizabeth recounted that Fritzl raped her and forced her to watch pornographic videos, which he made her reenact with him in front of her children in order to humiliate her. Shortly after midnight, police officers completed the investigation. Fritzl, aged 73, was arrested on the 26th of April on suspicion of serious crimes against family members. During the night of the 27th, Elizabeth and her children were taken into care. Police said Fritzl told investigators how to enter the basement chamber through a small hidden door opened by a secret keyless entry code. On the 29th of April, it was announced that DNA evidence confirmed Fritzl as the biological father of his daughter's 6 children. After the arrest, Rosemary Fritzl fled the home. She had allegedly known nothing about the events taking place right under her feet, and Joseph backed up her story. The tenants who had lived in the apartment on the first floor of the Fritzl home also never knew what was happening right beneath them, as Joseph had explained away all sounds by blaming faulty piping and a noisy heater. Today, Elizabeth Fritzl lives under a new identity in a secret Austrian village known only as Village X. The home is under constant CCTV surveillance and police patrol every corner. The family doesn't allow interviews anywhere within their walls and decline to give any themselves. Joseph Fritzl was sentenced to life in prison.